In addition to being a super cute and nostalgic accessory, the mood ring is supposed to tell you how you feel. Mood rings change color, and that color is meant to reflect your mood. For example, if it's blue, it could mean you're happy. If it's red, it could mean you're angry. If it's ombre and it has glitter in a diagonal line, well, good luck. This modern concept of mood rings is not something that's meant to be taken too seriously. It's just for fun. But in Lorde's newest single, the mood ring is treated like a very mystical, all-knowing entity that holds all of the answers and will solve all your problems. It's made out to be something that will reveal your deepest, darkest emotions. TBH, that's like a lot of pressure for a ring, even if it is super cute and can change colors. Lorde has stated that this song is a satire, which means that we are not supposed to take it at face value. Lorde has said that she's writing from the perspective of a character, not herself. When discussing the music video, she said that she had to undergo a transformation due to the satirical nature of the song, which she did. Our girl went blonde. In today's video, we're gonna discuss what it means for something to be satirical, like literally what is a satire, and we're also gonna ponder a little bit about what purpose Lorde might have had in making a song about mood and wellness satirical. And of course, as always on this channel, we're gonna do a literary analysis of the song lyrics, looking at things like diction, connotation, metaphors, etc. So get stoked. Please make sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, share with your friends if you enjoy this sort of content. I would really appreciate it. And comment down below what color your mood ring would be if you were wearing one. I don't know what color mine would be, but whatever color hangry is, it would be that color because your girl needs snacks, okay? Please send snacks. Hi everyone, welcome to this video. On my channel, I analyze song lyrics very in depth through the lens of literary analysis. You all voted. Today we are analyzing Lorde's newest single, Mood Ring. What am I feeling? If you watch my analysis of the song Gold Rush by Taylor Swift or Champagne Problems by Taylor Swift, you'll recognize this, my cute teacup that I keep my rings in. I checked to see if I had any mood rings and I didn't. So I'm just going to like pretend this random one that I'm wearing is a mood ring and we'll see if it tells me how I feel. Let's get started. As a reminder, everything presented in this video is my own personal opinion. Music is very subjective. Everyone's gonna have their own take on it, and I encourage you to leave yours down below. If you watch my channel, you know that I don't look up any other person's analysis. I don't want their vibes all up in my vibes. However, sometimes I do look up what the songwriter or the artist has said themselves. I thought I would do that for this song since this is a new album that was released. Lorde has actually said that this song is a satire. Lorde has talked a little bit about her inspiration behind this album. She says, I did a deep dive into 60s flower child culture. One thing that occurred to me as a major parallel between that time and our time is wellness culture and our culture of spirituality, pseudo-spirituality, etc. You can pause and read the entire quote here. She goes on to say, this is kind of my extremely satirical look at all of those vibes. She again confirmed that the song Mood Ring is satire and not her personal opinions. I will link every article I mention in the description box in case you'd like to read further. A satire is a humorous way of criticizing people or ideas to show that they have faults or are wrong. I really like this explanation of a satire from literaryterms.net. It says that satire is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices. At the bottom here, it says that there are two important things to remember about satire. It makes fun of a person, idea, or institution. And number two, which I think is very important to keep in mind, especially throughout this video, the purpose of satire is not just to entertain, but also to inform or make people think. The person who is creating the satire is probably not feeling super neutral about the subject matter. They have an opinion and they're illustrating that through satirical means. When you heard this song, did you guys think it was a satire at first? Did you get satirical vibes? I was thinking about it and I don't think I would have interpreted this song as a satire if it weren't for Lorde's comments. I'm not criticizing what Lorde said in any way. This is her art, and I do understand what she's saying about the satirical nature of this song. I do think there are a lot of satirical elements present. I would personally say that it's just more subtle. I personally would have said that this song is a song about wellness culture and about someone who's lost and is using wellness culture as a crutch. And I would have attributed the sarcastic remarks as kind of like pulling back the veil a little bit as a way for the listener to see that nothing's really gonna help you unless you help yourself. For me, there are two songs that come to mind when I think of a satirical song. The Fear by Lily Allen. I listened to this a lot when I had a MySpace. It's a really good song. And also the song Blank Space by Taylor Swift. I feel like those songs, it's very, very apparent in the lyrics. There are a lot of exaggerated lyrics, and there's a sort of progression to kind of the excessive nature of the lyrics. So I guess my benchmark for satirical songs is a little skewed towards more exaggerated lyrics. Super satirical or not, I really love this song, and I'm stoked to get into the analysis. I'm trying to blow bubbles, but inside can't seem to fix my mood. Today it's as dark as my roots, if I ever let them grow out. Now all of my oceans have riptides. Can't seem to find what's wrong. The whole world is letting me down. Don't you think the early 2000s seems so far away? In this verse, we're given some insight about the internal state of the protagonist. Protagonist means the main character. I'm trying to blow bubbles, but inside can't seem to fix my mood. So when I think about bubbles, I think of a nice summer day. You're blowing bubbles out in the sun. When you think about a bubble itself, it's very light. It floats. It's kind of airy. You can see through it. You can also associate bubbles with childhood and childhood innocence, with simpler times that were lighter and perhaps brighter as well. We're told that despite blowing bubbles, the protagonist still can't fix their mood on the inside. Blowing bubbles is an action. It's occurring in the external world. However, the internal world of the protagonist is not chill. Their mood can't be fixed by this external action. If you think about it, if you see someone like blowing bubbles, you may think that they're having a pretty good day. Like they're chill, they're outside, they're doing this fun activity, but you never really know how someone is feeling on the inside, right? So I think it's important to visualize the protagonist actually doing this action, but knowing and recognizing that inside, it's the opposite. The fact that it says can't seem to fix her mood suggests to me that she's been feeling this way for a while. Perhaps she's tried different things to try to feel better, but they haven't worked. The diction here, the word fix, is also significant. Diction means word choice, and I often discuss connotation, which I think of as the vibes or the emotions that the words elicit. When you fix something, it suggests that it was broken, so she feels as though her mood is broken. It's not working properly. She definitely recognizes that there is a problem. She is trying to find the solution. She's trying to fix it, but has not been able to yet. I want to discuss the lyric, "Today it's as dark as my roots." For me, this lyric has three purposes. We can view this as an instance of dark imagery, which is going to set a mood and affect the tone. This also helps us differentiate between the protagonist and Lorde. Also introduces a very interesting metaphor. Let's break these down one by one. Today, it's as dark as my roots if I ever let them grow out. So today's mood is very dark. This is dark imagery. It's not positive. When you feel dark, you feel sad, you feel angry. If you visualize being in the dark, like literally, you can't see anything. If there is like a door to escape into the sunlight, you can't see it because it's dark. So the dark imagery here is not positive. It's really showing us the protagonist is not feeling okay. She's in a very low place. So the protagonist here is referring to the roots of her hair. The fact that the protagonist's roots are coming in is an indicator for us that the protagonist may not be Lorde. We have extra clues that are not part of this song, right? We have a literal interview where Lorde states this. She says, "I was writing from the perspective of a character who is not me, although I have at times shared some of her traits." Then we also have the music video where Lorde is wearing a blonde wig. So we have those two external clues, but even without those, you could use this lyric as a little hint that perhaps the protagonist isn't actually Lorde. And the reason we could do that is because we know Lorde has never had another color hair, right? She's never had roots growing in as far as we know. For this lyric, I find the metaphorical viewpoint very interesting. When she says, "Today it's as dark as my roots," there's a few things to take into consideration. The color of her roots are her natural hair color. And for my interpretation, I've already established that the diction here, the word dark, is meant to represent her mood, right? It's dark imagery. It's part of this metaphor. Her mood is dark. You can dye your hair as much as you want. It's not going to change your natural hair color. The color of your roots, they're reflective of your natural state. So when we view this metaphorically, this darkness, this sadness is her current natural state. She's trying to hide it, maybe from others, maybe even from herself, but the truth is always there. It's very deeply rooted, pun intended, and there's no escaping from it. She's been able to cover it up for a little while, but now her roots are showing. Her true nature, her true mood is coming forth. We're talking about this in the context of a metaphor. Literally, you could never change the color of your natural hair. But if we extrapolate this a little bit and just talk about this conceptually, when you cover something up instead of getting to the root of the problem, you're never going to be healed. You can try to cover up the symptoms of your sadness and not let anyone know, and you can even ignore it yourself. And you may look okay and you may feel okay temporarily, but that true nature is always going to come through. To be able to get through things like this, you have to sit down with yourself and figure out what you need to heal. Whether that's asking for help, whether that's introspecting and looking at patterns in your life, you can't just cover things up. That's just a temporary fix, and it's only going to prolong the problem and perhaps make it even worse. I find this to be a very powerful metaphor, and it actually reminds me of the song Buzzcut Season by Lorde. I will link my analysis down below for you if you're interested. In that song, we had heads catching flame. In this song, we have a darkness growing from the head. I find that to be very interesting. In my analysis of Buzzcut Season, I touched upon how the head is where the mind is. It's where your thoughts are, your thought processes, and how that could be a factor in that metaphor. Here, it's a similar sort of thing, right? Your head is where your brain is. It's where your mind is, your thought processes. Maybe her thought processes are a part of what's causing this darkness. Maybe this is a mindset issue in addition to an emotional issue. The reason I find this metaphor so powerful and honestly kind of haunting is because this mood cannot be contained within the intangible realm, right? Her mood is so dark and heavy and not good that it cannot be contained within the realm of intangibility, within her mind, within her emotions. It is manifesting in a physical form. It's coming out of the protagonist. It can't be even contained in her internal world. It's coming into the external world, and it can be seen by others through her hair. Yeah, that's very sad, right? That's literally not okay. That's my take on it. That's how I'm interpreting this metaphor here. Please let me know your thoughts down below. I'd be really interested to hear your perspective. Now all of my oceans have riptides. An ocean is a very vast thing. There's a depth to it. It's mysterious. I view oceans as being representative of someone's internal state, of their emotions. So I am viewing the ocean here as the protagonist's emotional state. Here it's being stated that her oceans have riptides. A riptide is a narrow, jet-like stream of water that flows sporadically seaward for several minutes. Here is a picture of a riptide from an aerial view. Riptides are very dangerous, even for strong swimmers. Essentially, what they do is they sweep people out towards the sea. You can't swim against the current. It's said the best thing to do is to swim parallel to the shore. I will link the article I looked at down below. It has a video explaining this if you're interested. In addition to the strong force of the rip current, another dangerous aspect is that unless you're an expert, a normal person can't really tell if there's a riptide present just by looking out onto the water. It also doesn't have to be like a stormy day or anything for this to happen. This can happen on a regular sunny day. It's like danger hidden in plain sight. And we have to remember that this metaphor is representative of the protagonist's emotional state. Her emotional state is in danger, right? This is not positive at all. I also want to concentrate on the word
now all of my oceans have riptides. This indicates that this is a new occurrence. Prior to this, her oceans did not have riptides. It was probably smooth sailing, right? But something has changed, something has shifted.
It's kind of violent too. We have some violent imagery here, and it's something that could become fatalistic. So this is very, very important. It's showing the depth of pain the protagonist is in. It's a very deep pain. It's an emotional pain. Can't seem to find what's wrong. The whole world is letting me down. This suggests that this mood, this feeling has been going on for a while. She's tried to find out what's causing it or why she's feeling the way she is, but she hasn't been able to. It's not just her own self that's causing herself to feel this way, it's her external world. This seems to be a little bit more existential. Sometimes when you're feeling sad, you're just like sad at yourself or mad at yourself for something you did or didn't do. This seems to be a more deeply rooted sort of darkness or sadness. It seems to be more existential. It has to do with the state of the world or the protagonist's relation to the world. Don't you think the early 2000s seems so far away? So this is interesting to me for a couple reasons. The first thing to consider is that maybe the protagonist romanticized the early 2000s. She's saying that this romanticized time that was more positive is so far away. I can't even grasp onto the feelings of that time anymore. She feels far removed from that positivity. You could also interpret this as her kind of dissociating from the present moment a little bit, perhaps trying to get back to the mindset she had during the early 2000s. Perhaps that was a time period where she felt happier and brighter. What's interesting to me here is that if you look at this within the context of today's world, the fashion trends, at least in the United States, they're Y2K. The early 2000s fashion trends are back. Like, they're literally here right now. It's interesting to me because when I grew up, the Y2K fashion was in style, but I was too young to wear them. So like back then I was too young for it, and now I'm like kind of too old for the trends, so I've always observed them. And it's interesting because the first time I observed the early 2000s trends as a child, it felt different than how I feel observing them now. The state of the world is very different. I think that the early 2000s were a much more positive time. I understand that I was a kid back then and, you know, things are more chill when you're a child. Just looking at the history during that time, I think we can make the argument that things were more chill in the early 2000s as compared to here. It's so ironic. I'm pretty sure I tweeted about this at one point because I was having like an existential moment and I was like, the clothes are the same, but the vibes are different. So that's something interesting that I just wanted to note. I don't know, let me know what y'all think. This whole song has an early 2000s vibe, okay? Trust me, I know. I stan the early 2000s. This song to me has a very light early 2000s vibe, especially with the backing vocals and melodically. I feel like that's intentional. It definitely adds another layer to everything. Verse 2. Ladies, begin your sun salutations, transcendental in your meditations, love and light. You can burn sage and I'll cleanse the crystals. We can get high, but only if the wind blows. Just right. So in the first verse, we had a more personal, intimate look at the protagonist's internal state. Now we are outside, we're in the external world. It seems like she's like a leader or a teacher of some sort. She's giving orders, not in like a mean way, but she's telling others what to do. Someone is in this position of leadership, telling people to do certain things. You would assume that since they're knowledgeable about the sun salutations and all of these things, you would assume that she would be feeling grounded and happy while she's instructing. So that's another thing that's ironic. Even if they're knowledgeable about all of these things, about these wellness trends, it doesn't mean that it's working for them 100% of the time, right? Ladies, begin your sun salutations. Sun salutations, they're a series of movements in yoga. Sun salutations are a set of 12 yoga poses.
I want to make a quick comment. Here it says that in the Vedic tradition, the sun is symbolic of consciousness and therefore has been worshipped daily in Indian culture. Y'all, this album is literally called Solar Power, and the first single did have some low-key sun worship vibes. This is a stretch, I think, but I personally am viewing this as a nod to the rest of this album, which is called Solar Power. Solar meaning the sun. So I just wanted to point that out. I did a quick chuckle when I noticed that. Yoga, as we know, is something that a lot of people do for wellness. It has a lot of health benefits and mental benefits as well. As we get a little bit further into the song, I'm gonna discuss what Lorde's purpose is in listing all of these wellness trends and how they fit into this satirical narrative.
transcendental in your meditations.
The word transcendental here, that diction is important. It refers to anything that has to do with the spiritual, non-physical world. It's something that's beyond ordinary. It's something that goes beyond the regular physical realm. It seems like the protagonist is really expecting a very extraordinary meditation experience for her students. Now, I personally don't meditate. I probably should. I know it has a lot of benefits, but I would assume, and please, if you are someone that meditates, correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume that each meditation session is different. I would not think that you would have a grand transcendental experience every single time you meditate. Maybe you do if you've been doing it for a long time, but for most people, I don't think that's the case. So we could interpret this as a hyperbole. A hyperbole is a literary device. It's when something is overly exaggerated. Hyperboles are very common in works of satire. And this makes sense within this context because the next line, love and light, I am interpreting as being said in an ironic tone because the protagonist of this song is feeling the opposite of love and light. Like in verse 1, she literally has riptides associated with her emotional state, and there's dark imagery surrounding her emotional state. So she's not feeling love and light. She's literally feeling dark and not love, right? Now, you may be saying that we're reading too much into this and it's not that satirical and we should kind of be more chill. That's valid. However, I would argue that if you look at the last part of this line, and I'm going to get to this in a second, we have a pretty big hyperbole in my opinion when it says we can get high but only if the wind blows just right. That brings forth a feeling of anxiety in my opinion, which is in stark contrast to how yoga and meditation should make you feel. So I find that very ironic, and I find the specificity of that lyric to be hyperbolic, and that lyric to me just shows that everything preceding it is not meant to be taken in a straightforward manner. This whole verse is leading up to that last line, and that last line indicates that everything here is satirical. There is an undercurrent of irony and just not chill vibes going on.
You can burn sage and I'll cleanse the crystals. Again, these are listing activities that people may do to try to, feel better or to make their environment better.
All right, I think it's time we start discussing possible motivations Lorde had for making this song satirical. Remember, a satire is like a commentary, right? Its purpose is to make the reader, or in this case, the listener, think. So what does Lorde want us to think about? There's no way to know for sure, but here are two hypotheses. Through my extensive research, I found out that Lorde sent an email to her fans. Side note, I should really sign up for those emails. Within the email, Lorde discussed the single mood ring, and she actually included links to articles about how particular wellness trends had some negative consequences. So with that information, I think it's safe to say that one of the reasons this song is satirical is to acknowledge the dark side of wellness culture. Another point that can be taken away from this song is that trends can actually be distractions. In the interest of time, I'm going to paraphrase a few points from these articles. I will link every article I reference down below. I want to note that this issue is very complex and multifaceted. When I say that I researched these things, I use the word research very, very lightly. I literally just Googled everything, which I think is a very good starting point. But if you're someone who wants more information, I would definitely suggest doing your own research, looking at different sources, reading anecdotal things from people who are part of these cultures, also looking at academic sources from people who actually study these sorts of dynamics for a living, maybe like some anthropologists, sociologists, etc. Again, this is a very surface level introduction to these issues. Something to think about when you kind of immerse yourself in wellness culture is to remember where these practices and where these belief systems originated from. It's so easy to forget that these rituals, these beliefs have a very rich history. When you take something that's very sacred and very important to someone's culture and you distill it down, I feel like distill is too much of a nice word. When you break it apart in a way that's more bite-sized and just more attractive to use in like headlines and as little blurbs, when you do things like that, it becomes very disrespectful. Specific belief systems and rituals came into existence in a very like nuanced way, right? These sorts of things have a historical context, a spiritual context, maybe even a political context. And when you take all of that away and just present one or 2 points that are part of a very larger story, it's a disservice to the culture that it originated from. I'm going to read some quotes from people who are parts of these cultures and how they feel about this. These huge companies are profiting off of our spirituality. That's not how it should be. It hurts my heart quite a bit. That quote is from Amy Willier, who is the co-owner of a native art gallery. Smudging is when you burn certain herbs, including sage, for purification purposes. That's a very basic definition of it. Here, Willier says, smudging is not just like, I'm going to light the sage and have a glass of wine and all the bad spirits will get out of here. There's a ceremonial way to do it. The next quote is from Corey Snache. I apologize, I know I'm mispronouncing that. And this is discussing the burning of sage. People who utilize sage spiritually have a very different concept of what sage is, and that should be respected. It is deep-rooted with medicinal and spiritual understandings that are reinforced with teachings passed down through generations. It's really easy when you read something online to take it at face value and just kind of run with the information you're presented with. But when it comes to things like this that are part of people's cultures and belief systems, I think it's necessary to understand where they came from. So if you want to participate in these practices, you can do so in a respectful and mindful way. Something really big in wellness culture are crystals, and I believe Lorde touched upon this in her email about the unethical crystal mining that happens. So if you're not familiar, it's believed that crystals have distinct energies that can be very healing. According to this article that was published in 2019, in the US, demand for overseas crystals and gemstones has doubled over the past 3 years. It goes on to call the crystal industry a multi-billion-dollar industry. They go on to mention that social media played a really big role in driving this increase in sales. A lot of these crystals are mined in conditions that are not safe, and they're mined in the world's poorest countries. For example, it says that Madagascar is one of the poorest countries in the world, but it has a lot of crystals. And instead of having a lot of machinery, it's humans that go in there and they dig for it. It says that while there are a few large mining companies that operate in Madagascar, most of the crystals are mined artisanally, which means that they are mined by small groups and families without regulation. They are paid very low prices for their labor. And on top of that, the mines are just dangerous. Landslides can occur. The air quality is not great. This puts the miners at risk for developing things like lung cancer. Child labor is also an issue. According to the U.S. Department of Labor and the International Labor Organization, they estimate about 85,000 children work in Madagascar's mines. Again, these are all issues that are very nuanced. There's a lot of factors at play here. Now I want to briefly discuss the other takeaway from this song, which is that trends can become distractions and not be helpful. Sometimes participating in wellness trends and really any sort of trend can take the value out of what you're doing. I think it's so easy to tell yourself, okay, I need to take care of myself, and you start participating in all of these wellness trends. Ironically enough, you kind of get lost in them and it becomes like a robotic sort of thing. You're not intentional about it and you're not mindful about it. You can kind of lose sight of why you even started. To be clear, I am not saying these practices don't have value. The point here is that if you get too wrapped up on these trends, on the next new thing that's supposed to help you and supposed to heal you, you lose sight of yourself. You need to check in with yourself. You need to see if these things are working. If they're not, you need to explore why they're not. It's very necessary for you to be introspective and reflective when you're trying to better yourself and when you're trying to heal yourself. Merely doing these things is an external activity. You have to remember to go inwards to see how you're reacting to these things.
We can get high, but only if the wind blows. Just right. The last part of this verse is interesting. It's showing that there is a great specificity to the process. Maybe it's too specific, right? There's like too much discipline here. What may be more beneficial for them is to step back and be chill for a second. There's such a thing as being consumed too much by anything, right? Even things that are good for you, like exercise. If you exercise too much, it's not good for you. There's a limit. So anything that's positive, you can still overdo and it can become a negative. There is a beauty in balance. Chorus. I can't feel a thing. I keep looking at my mood ring. Hold on, this is gonna be our fake mood ring. It's a heart. I'm looking at my mood ring. Tell me how I'm feeling. Floating away, floating away. I really like this chorus. So in the chorus, we're back to the protagonist's internal state. It's very interesting because we're viewing her as an instructor in a class, telling her students to do the sun salutations, but internally, she is feeling the opposite of what these wellness things are supposed to do for her. She says, I can't feel a thing. She's emotionally numb. Maybe she's in a dissociative state. I keep looking at my mood ring. She is really relying on a mood ring, on this inanimate object to tell her how she feels. She's waiting for something external to help her. She's not going within and trying to figure out what's going on. She's not being proactive about this. Okay, say that mood rings work. Say that all of the mood rings work, even the ones you get from the vending machines, right? They can only tell you so much. Like they may tell you that you're happy or sad. They're not gonna tell you the nuances in your emotions. They're not gonna tell you why you feel your emotions. This protagonist seems to be so emotionally tired that she doesn't really have a choice. She's tried everything. She's like at her wit's end emotionally that she has no choice but to rely on the mood ring. My point here is that we can't really blame her. I feel like she's tried everything she can and she just subconsciously has given up. She's just like, I don't know what to do anymore. Tell me what's going on. It's kind of like in the song Death by a Thousand Cuts by Taylor Swift. I'll link my analysis down below where that protagonist asks the traffic lights if it's gonna be all right. Like sometimes you just get to your wit's end and you ask an inanimate object things. Like it's fine, but don't expect an answer. I feel like if you expect an answer back, like realistically, that's when you know that you need to like chill for a sec. What's really sad here is that no one's gonna come save her. Support systems in life are very important. They can help you in a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, no one can actually do what needs to be done in order to heal you internally. That's on you. No one is gonna do it for her. People may support her, they might let her vent to them, they may suggest things to do, but you always have to be the one to choose to get up and to go after something. And that thing you're going after could be healing, right? So it's very sad that the protagonist is in this state and that she's gotten to this point. She really is looking for external things to heal her internally, and that's simply not how it works. Floating away, I interpret that as dissociation, dissociating from reality, from herself too. She's emotionally numb, she can't feel anything. Again, this is not really her fault, just where she's at. Verse 3. I'm trying to get well from the inside. Plants and celebrity news. All the vitamins I consume. Let's fly somewhere eastern. They'll have what I need. So the protagonist tells us that she's trying to get well from the inside, which is good, but like look at what's said after it. She talks about plants and celebrity news and vitamins. I assume that the vitamins are what she thinks is helping her heal from the inside.
All right. This whole verse is very interesting. It's very, very ironic. I sense a lot of sarcasm and sass in this verse, which honestly, I appreciate. The first statement of this verse says that the protagonist wants to get well from the inside. This to me suggests a sort of emotional healing, mental healing, and maybe even physiologically. I think that's where the vitamins come in. However, everything she states here has a problem with it. Let's go through them one by one. The plants here are the least problematic. The only thing I have to say about this is that plants are very trendy. A lot of people, are hashtag plant moms or plant dads or hashtag plant caretakers, etc. I stand nature. I think that's great if you're taking care of plants. Maybe they're a distraction or they help you cope. I know gardening can be very therapeutic. For me, I think plants are included here simply because they're a trend. I view celebrity news as something you would look at in your free time. Maybe it can serve as a distraction. A lot of people are inspired by celebrities. So I view this more as an interest. However, I do think it's ironic that it's stated within the context of wellness. In this song, anything that would be categorized as a distraction, I am interpreting as ironic. So for me, the fact that celebrity news is stated here, I think it's ironic. You know, it can be fun to catch up on the celebrity news if that's something you're interested in. However, I don't necessarily view it as part of like a wellness routine. And now we have vitamins. It's very important to eat nutritious food and to make sure that your body has the appropriate amount of vitamins. However, vitamins are a trend. I'm gonna paraphrase some things from this article right here. Again, link down below. It's called Instagram has made vitamins a big business, but will they actually make you healthier? It talks about how all of these vitamin companies claim that their products will make everyone healthier, but how at the bottom there's always a disclaimer that says, quote, these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. And this is because vitamins and supplements are not regulated the same way that medicine is. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994 made it so that vitamin manufacturers can make marketing claims without FDA approval. Some medical professionals have pushed back against the idea that vitamins are necessary for health. Eric Michos, who is an associate professor of medicine at Johns Hopkins University, has said, you can get all the vitamins you need from a balanced diet. There is no added gain from taking a multivitamin. This article also cites a decade-long study conducted by Harvard University, which found that taking a daily multivitamin had no effect on the probability of cardiovascular disease. The point here is that vitamins can be beneficial, but you would have to speak with your doctor about that, get appropriate testing done to see if you're actually deficient in certain vitamins. And in that case, your doctor would tell you to take supplements and they would tell you the dosage and how often to take it. I think that's why Lorde included vitamins, because they are so trendy. And then we have the statement, let's fly somewhere Eastern, they'll have what I need. This is a reference to Eastern cultures and their spiritual beliefs and practices. When it says, let's fly somewhere Eastern, this is a form of escapism. You're going somewhere and you think that just by going there, they're gonna have what you need. But in order to get anything in life, especially healing, you have to work for it. To me, this is stated in such a nonchalant way. It's like you can buy as many self-help books as you want, but if you don't read them and you don't apply what you learned, nothing is gonna change, right? At the end of the day, you have to work for what you want. For me, this entire verse is straight sarcasm.
I think this is an instance of things kind of quieting the symptoms, but not getting to the actual issue. Verse 4. So verse 4 is actually the same as verse 2, except for one particular lyric. So I'll read through it, but we'll only concentrate on the new lyric, okay? Ladies, begin your sun salutations. Pluto and Scorpio, generation, love and light. You can burn sage and I'll cleanse the crystals. We can get high, but only if the wind blows just right. So the new lyric here is Pluto and Scorpio generation.
All right, everyone, it's time for an astrology intermission. Yay! I can sense your excitement. I am not an expert at all. Please keep that in mind. Astrology is a very nuanced field, but let's break down the phrase Pluto in Scorpio generation. First, let's discuss Pluto. Pluto is no longer considered a planet. It got demoted years ago, which sounds very dramatic and very sad, but for our purposes in this context, we will be discussing Pluto as a planet. Planets orbit the sun and they do so at different rates. For example, Earth, that's the planet we're on right now. Oh my God, if you're listening to this from a different planet, first of all, I don't believe you. Second of all, comment down below. So Earth completes one orbit around the sun in 1 year. Another example is Mercury. It only takes 3 Earth months for Mercury to orbit the sun. However, it takes Pluto 248 Earth years to complete one orbit around the sun. This is why within astrology, Pluto is referred to as a generational planet, because the positioning of Pluto is going to be the same for the people in a generation. Now you're probably like, girl, what do you mean by positioning of the planet? Okay, this is how I think about astrological placements. And again, I am not an expert, okay? I'm literally just a person. Within astrology, we have 12 zodiac signs. They also correspond to constellations. Think about a map. On a map, we have borders, but when you actually are on the land, there aren't any lines anywhere, right? Humans, we have created the borders between the different cities, the different countries. We've named them. We've defined these spaces of land for ourselves. This defining the land is how I think about zodiac signs, except instead of defining land, they're defining space, areas in space. So when planets orbit the sun, they move through these different spaces, through these different signs. So for example, when you hear that, oh, like Venus is in Aquarius right now, it means that the planet Venus is moving through the space that we have defined as Aquarius. And Pluto, since it moves very, very slowly, it's going to spend a lot of time in the same sign. Again, it's called a generational planet. So everyone born in the same generation is going to have the same Pluto placement. Now, when was Pluto in Scorpio, you may ask? Well, Pluto was in Scorpio between November 1983 and November 1995. If you were born during this time, that makes you a millennial. Yay! Low-key, I feel attacked by this song because Lorde is really coming for millennials. And again, I find this interesting because does Lorde consider herself a millennial or Gen Z? She was born right on the cusp, right on the cutoff in 1996. So is she part of the group that she's kind of calling out, or is she a little bit more removed from this group? This song is a social commentary on wellness culture and kind of the darker side of it. And when you look up the generation that has participated a lot in wellness culture and has promoted wellness culture, millennials do pop up. This is just kind of pinpointing the generation that has really been a part of wellness culture. I do not think that Lorde is saying that only millennials participate in wellness culture. No, other generations do as well, younger or older. I do think that millennials are being mentioned here specifically because they really came into young adulthood during a time when wellness was very, very trendy. I would argue that when you're becoming a young adult, you are trying to get your life together. That's kind of like your mindset. So you would probably be interested in trends that promise you that. Trends that tell you literally that it's going to improve your life.
Chorus part 2. I can't feel a thing. I keep looking at my mood ring. Tell me how I'm feeling. Floating away, floating away. All the sad girls sing, we'll keep dancing till the mood rings. Tell us how we're feeling. Floating away, floating away. So this is chorus part 2 because part of the original chorus is repeated, but we have some added lyrics. So I'm going to concentrate on that. It starts from where it says, all the sad girls sing, we'll keep dancing till the mood rings. The word dancing here, that diction really stood out to me because Lorde mentions dancing in her other songs. Again, I'll link my Lorde playlist down below for you, but she talks about dancing in her song Team, and she also talks about dancing in her song The Louvre, I think. When it says, and all the sad girls sing, the word sad, that diction is significant because she's explicitly stating that they're sad. And it seems like this whole group of girls is sad. Is this her class that she's the instructor of? We'll keep dancing till the mood rings. They're not dancing in a jovial way. Usually dancing is something that's jovial and celebratory, but they're dancing in a sad way. They're dancing to occupy their minds and to distract themselves from their internal state, which they're ignoring or which they're numb to. So they're dancing till the mood rings. When I hear the word mood rings, the first time I heard this lyric, I loved it. I was like, OMG, this is amazing. This is beautiful. So obviously this is like a play on words, right? And rings here is a verb, it's an action. When I think of something ringing, I think of it arriving. So it can be signifying an arrival of some sort. Someone is gonna come after the ringing happens. How I visualize this is like a phone. There's different ways to think about it, but for me, this is what resonates with me. Someone has to be on the other line of the phone for it to ring and for you to pick up. So it's like they're waiting by the phone on a Friday night, waiting for someone to call who's not going to. That's the vibe I get here. They're not being proactive. They're just sitting and waiting. And when they realize that that phone isn't gonna ring, they're not gonna get up and, make other plans or do something else. They're just gonna keep sitting there. They're waiting for something to happen to them. They're waiting for the mood to ring, for the mood to change, for the mood to make sense. They're just waiting there and they're not doing anything to help themselves. And again, this is not blaming anyone, because you can get to that point internally where you just literally can't do it anymore. But from an outsider looking in, you realize that no solution is gonna come from it, right? So that's ironic within itself, because the mood is never gonna ring or change. Understanding is never gonna come unless you take actions or make changes to allow for that to happen. Tell us how we're feeling. The fact that we're talking about a group of people now instead of just one person is very sad, because it shows that this problem is not confined to one person. It's widespread. Tell us how we're feeling. They're all completely detached from their self. Not even the instructor, the protagonist, has the answers, right? Talk about ironic, talk about sad. Floating away, floating away. There's like no resolution. You're just waiting and waiting. Floating away, floating away. That phrase is repeated. I always state that repetition signifies significance. It really intensifies what this lyric is saying. They're emotionally numb. They kind of have run out of options for themselves. That's how I'm interpreting that. This is talking about a group of people that are just lost. They're having a sort of crisis, an emotional mood crisis. Last verse. Take me to some kind of place. That's repeated in the background vocals. Anywhere. Watch the sun set, look back on my life. I just want to know, will it be all right? This last verse, particularly the last two lines, really give me that early 2000s vibe where it's kind of like a speak singing sort of thing and it's kind of fast. For some reason, it reminds me of the Princess Diaries. I feel like maybe there was a song in that soundtrack that kind of had that rhythm or something. If you get that same vibe, please comment down below. Also, if you agree that the Princess Diaries should have been Oscar nominated, like this video in solidarity and comment down below. Take me to some kind of place. This to me shows a level of dissociation going on here. The phrase some kind of place. That diction is very, very telling of the protagonist's emotional state. They don't care where they go as long as it's anywhere. They just want to not be where they're at. The place here is an emotional place that they're referring to. They just want to feel anything but what they're feeling now. Anywhere. There you go. Watch the sunset, look back on my life. So here we have light imagery, kind of, but it's like that setting. We have a sunset. Remember that this whole album is called Solar Power, so any sort of light imagery or any mention of the sun, we should take a little bit more significantly. When a sun sets, it is signifying a ending of some sort, and the protagonist here is viewing the sunset, so she's viewing the ending of a day. The sunset here is a bit of an ominous image. Here literally the day is ending, but if you want to view it in a more grand scheme, it could be the end of a lot of things. And also sunsets introduce you to darkness. That's dark imagery, which is not positive. So while the protagonist is viewing the sunset, she's thinking back on her life and wondering if she'll ever get out of this. Is she always going to feel like she's existing in the darkness, or is it going to change? We don't have a resolution, which I think is realistic. I think a lot of times with these sorts of things, you may not have answers right away. You may have to end up existing in this state for a little while until you figure out how to get out of it, until you figure out how you can ask for help, until you get help. To sum up, this song is very catchy. I've been listening to it on repeat for a while, but the subject matter is pretty sad. We have people here relying on an inanimate object to tell them the state of their intimate internal vibes, right? As we stated earlier, this song is meant to be satirical. There's different ways to view it. Again, in her interview, she talked about unethical sourcing of certain things that are part of the trends. We're kind of borrowing these things from other cultures. Do we really understand the history and the significance of it? Are we only using these things just for their benefit without respecting the ancient foundation for it? Perhaps Lorde wants to start a dialogue or provide some commentary on how these wellness trends aren't really going to work for you unless you work on yourself first, or unless you acknowledge how you feel while you're doing them. But I interpret this as a feeling that these people are having in a moment in time. They're kind of in an emotional mood crisis. I think ultimately they will learn that this mood ring is not going to answer all of their questions and that they're going to have to take a look within themselves. That's all I have for this song. Please let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and to subscribe if you haven't already, if you want. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!